Earlier this week, it was announced that Square Enix started the process of selling Eidos, Crystal Dynamics, Square Enix Montreal, and many Western IP like Tomb Raider, Gex, Hitman, Deus Ex and Legacy of Kain to Embracer Group to the tune of $300 million. And unanimously, to the rest of the gaming community, this was a very head-scratching decision that leaves us with so many questions than answers. Why would you be willing to part with a very marketable and successful IP that you helped a big deal with? Why for just $300 million? I hope these are questions that we could find out later on. So while Square Enix has an explanation as to why they're selling a large, important part of their portfolio, I have come up with 3 other reasons why they're doing this. The first reason being that Square Enix, as they publicly stated, is that they want to invest in blockchain and cryptocurrencies. They seem to be full speed ahead on NFTs, and despite Square Enix's most loyal fans opposing the idea of investing in digital goods, they apparently see there's a profitable future in it. I guess they want to product digital content that only a select number of people can own and access, opposed to the typical images and videos you can simply find and download online. Me personally, I think it's just going to be another fad that comes and goes, and I don't think it will be a worthwhile endeavor for them. The reason this may not be the case, however, is that while $300 million seems like a steal for an acquisition, it also seems like way too much money to be investing into a trend, regardless of whether it's an avenue to make money. $300 million for NFTs seems like a gamble, and frankly, why would you give away Tomb Raider for that? So this seems like a corporate blanket statement if the real reason actually sounds worse. The second reason is going through a lot of financial hardships. Square Enix, especially in recent years, have had a reputation for overspending on game development. They've wanted cutting-edge graphics, immersive gameplay, and long 50 to 60-hour stories in each of their mainline games. And with games that ambitious, you know you're going to have to pay a lot of people and for a long time. Final Fantasy XV, Final Fantasy VII Remake and Kingdom Hearts 3 all took a combined development time of at least 31 years. At minimum. And what does that mean? They cost so much money to make that they could possibly have lost money on all of them. They failed to sell a number of copies over time to the profits could not outweigh the costs to make them. I can't imagine for the life of me having to recoup losses from making one of these games, let alone 3 of them. So if this is the actual reason, then selling all those studios and IP away would be the reactionary response in order to either A, reduce the debt, or B, come up with the funding necessary to make Final Fantasy XVI and Kingdom Hearts 4. The reason this may not be the case, however, is that Tomb Raider was doing great for them. They produced 3 games in 9 years, each game has cost around $100 million to produce, and each game has sold at least 9 million copies. All without needing help from multiple studios at a time, all without Disney, and all without needing several delays and increases in funds. That's incredible. So if they're really in a financial hole, the worst thing to do would be to sell one of the most profitable parts of your company. The more responsible thing to do would be stop this overspending and setting ridiculously high expectations on these games. The third reason is pretty weird. But it would be because Square Enix sees an image problem by continuing to own these Western studios. In 2010, according to their press releases, Tomb Raider was sitting at just 35 million copies sold worldwide. Today, they're now at a whopping 88 million copies sold, and not only that, that's more than Enix's longtime flagship series Dragon Quest. So in just over a decade, Tomb Raider has become a much greater asset than one of their top Japanese IPs, and I really wouldn't doubt that purists, traditionalists within the company would be furious about that. Square Enix still has a couple of Western studios that they're making games like Life is Strange, Just Cause and other IP. They might be great products, but by no means are they the next Tomb Raider. Square Enix wants a diverse lineup of games, but perhaps they don't want anything outside their bread and butter to be successful. Razorfist has come to the conclusion that Square Enix would rather lose money in Japan than make money in America. But that could be why this reason may not be true. The whole point of buying a company is to make money with it. Where would Square Enix be today without Tomb Raider? They've sold over 50 million copies since the transaction took place, they've been able to work with Marvel on several games, and they've actually made Lara Croft more in demand than before. Tomb Raiders had another movie in 2018 that was a global hit. Lara has made guest appearances in several different games, and soon they're going to release a Netflix animated series. So, I don't know. Square Enix seems like the type of company that hates when tradition fails and non-tradition succeeds, but at the same time, they've seen Tomb Raider as one of their 3 core franchises alongside Dragon Quest and Final Fantasy. The last reason I have is that the people at Eidos and Crystal Dynamics aren't happy with Square Enix and have wanted to split from them. There are several possible reinforcements of this. Crystal Dynamics probably didn't want to make any more Marvel games. Square Enix Montreal probably didn't want to make any more Tomb Raider games. Eidos was probably unhappy that the Deus Ex franchise was going on a hiatus. Or they probably didn't like the direction that either Square Enix the company was going or the direction that their own games were going. They probably wanted to regain control over their projects again, and maybe the communication between the Western studios and Square Enix HQ was also shoddy. It was only announced last month that Crystal Dynamics was back to making Tomb Raider games, so this deal was likely in the works for a while, and that regardless of what was going to happen, Crystal Dynamics has been working independently from Square. Now the reason being that this might not be true is that, why would Square grant them the request to be sold to another company? Why would it be that easy for Square Enix to accept their request and make such a big decision? If Blizzard for some reason wasn't happy with Activision, then they would be shit out of luck. They would be nothing those people could do, so why would it be different for Square Enix and their Western studios? Who knows? But this last reason ties into the decision to sell them off to the Embracer Group, and while not completely plausible, it definitely makes more sense once I mention it. The only logical reason for why I would think that you'd make a deal like that for only $300 million is because there would be some input within the people at Eidos and Crystal Dynamics in terms of where they'd want to end up. Maybe they specifically told Square Enix they want to be with Embracer. Because we're at the era in gaming where there are big acquisitions going on. Had Sony, Microsoft, Nintendo found out Square was putting these companies up for sale, they'd be chomping at the bit to spend billions for it all. And there's a good chance that Crystal Dynamics, Eidos, those people would not want that. They don't want to be owned by another console manufacturer and go exclusive. They want to keep making software for multiple platforms and not give certain platforms any advantage or disadvantage at the risk of losing sales. And for Embracer Group, it seems like they want to continue funding studios to develop multi-platform games. And as far as the foreseeable future is concerned, Embracer seems like a safe haven for companies that don't want to end up in a gigantic Sony or Microsoft portfolio one day. So why $300 million? After all things considered, that was probably their biggest offer to Square Enix. Anything over 300 would be too much for them, and considering I haven't heard of this parent company until this deal happened, it sounds believable to me. But what do you all think? Why did Square Enix sell these assets? Let me know in the comments down below.